guys ready for Hank? Hank! You know how this works.
Japanese researchers claim that if you stare into a dog's eyes, the hormone oxytocin is going to kick in, the love hormone, cuddle hormone. Now, those of you who are dog lovers, how many of you are there, right? Yeah, for those of you who are not, you can say death penalty, can't you? Okay, good. That's how I felt about my first dog, and she meant everything to me. She really did, because I was going through a terrible time in my life, and she was there at the right moment. Her name was Sadie, a beagle. And she won the lottery because when she came back to my apartment, she looked around and saw a king-size Tempur-Pedic and said, "That's going to be mine." Then she used to look at the pantry for hours, thinking treats will be manifesting from this any moment now. And if you know beagles, you know all they do is eat, right? I mean, if my apartment was robbed, she'd look at the two burglars and say, "Look, you give me a cookie, I'll show her where the silver is." But her gaze was everything. Those researchers were right. I was stopped at Montrose and Richmond, and there was some traffic, and everybody was looking at a gentleman in a car. And I looked over there, and it was a gentleman who had been badly burnt. He was terribly disfigured. And as he was looking around, everybody else was looking away, but he was looking in my car. Actually, he was looking at Sadie in the back seat as she had her head out the window, looking at this gentleman, seeing no difference. He wasn't disfigured to her. He was smiling. They made each other's day. She was a therapy dog at MD Anderson. She could cure anyone with a touch and a smile. A couple months shy of her 16th birthday, she was riddled with cancer, and we had to put her down. And I'm not going to tell you what you don't already know. You know how painful that is. I can't possibly describe the pain, but the vet, who was pretty magnificent, explained to me what I would be experiencing because I was holding her. And just like she had done all of those years looking at others, she looked at me and she said, "Thank you for my life." So I held her, and my heart dropped to my stomach and stayed there as she left. And then I got in my car, going back to my apartment. I was terrified looking back. I didn't want to see the back seat where she was seated. So about 20 minutes later, I'm driving into my apartment, and as I drive into my apartment, there's the mailboxes on the left. It was early Saturday morning. There wasn't any reason for me to look at those mailboxes. No reason at all. I've never done it before, but I did instinctively. I looked to the mailboxes, and there was a young man about 35 years old wearing sunglasses. And as I looked at him and he looked at me, he smiled. And he was walking 2 beagle puppies. I felt great at that moment. I went to the manager when the management opens up a little bit later, and I asked, "Who is that guy?" I described him, and they said, "I don't know who you're talking about. If there was anybody here who looks like him." I said, "You got to be kidding." He was wearing sunglasses, about 35 years old, dark hair, black T-shirt, walking 2 beagle puppies. And the manager said, "Hank, there are no beagle puppies that live here. None that you're describing." And I'm thinking, nobody's going to believe this. So I talked to my wife, who's the smartest person I know, and I said, "You're a spiritual person, and I'm not. What do you think of this episode?" And she said, "It's a message. It's definitely a message." And I said, I never experienced one like this before. It was the most spiritual moment that I ever experienced, short of watching my son born. So I thought about that. And the man was not Sadie reincarnated, don't worry about it, although they did have the same coloring. But nevertheless, I thought about that, and what I thought was that, death ends a life, but it doesn't end a relationship. And then I remembered what Dr. Seuss always said, which is, don't cry because it's over. smile because it happened. And she did happen, even though it ended. And she will forever be loved and lodged very deeply in my heart. Peace. Thank you.